Let's review the core elements for teaching in the Early Start Denver model methodology. There are very specific strategies and methodology based on the ESDM core teaching elements. So when we're working using the ESDM program, we have to kind of follow the methodology in order to maximize the learning. So when we're talking about, say, any type of interaction, there's always a way to do the things that we do. So, but it follows the same routine. But it's important that you follow the routine in order for your child to get the most out of it. And the hardest thing, I think, is just to the development of the routine. So when you're first developing the routine with your child, you're going to have to put in the most effort. You're going to have to prompt them the most and give them, hand over hand for certain things, and expect them to be frustrated, and expect them to be unhappy with it. And especially if your child is not flexible, it's going to be even harder. But the routine of it and the consistency of it will actually teach them so much and set them up for success for all the different learning opportunities that they have throughout their life. So just get into the routine of, when you need them to learn something, you have to show them step by step and do it with them and hand over hand with them, showing them. So if it's something where you are teaching, one of their goals is to throw a tissue in the trash, you need to walk over with them and put their hand on the tissue and help them open the garbage and throw the actual tissue in the garbage. And then when they do it, you say, "Yay, great job. You threw your tissue away." And then make it over, so that's part of the methodology. It's like hand over hand until they can do it on their own, because you're backing off the prompt level. And then you're using positive affect and you're praising them. And so those are just pieces and parts that have been put together to make it work. So follow the methodology and it'll maximize the learning for your child, and you'll start understanding as you learn more about the program. But you can use these techniques all day long with your kiddos. So by just thinking about different activities differently that they're doing, because you know what their goals are in different areas, you can say, "Oh, I could work on a sorting goal right now while we're putting the silverware in the silverware tray. I can sort forks and spoons." Or I can have them, we're putting socks together and they have to sort. So I can have them match two colors together, like yellow, find all the yellow socks and the blue socks, and just thinking about different activities in a way that you can teach your child something. And it is wearing your ESDM goggles. So there's 8 core elements in teaching interaction based upon the ESDM methodology. So interest begins activity is number 1. And that means that your child has to be interested in the activity that you're doing. So they have to show an interest. So things like giving them a couple of options of things to play with, and then they pick that one, and you don't try to talk them into going with the other one. You just go with that one. And there's different ways to do that. Like mostly we found success if you put the toys that your child plays with in plastic bins that are clear, with a little label on them, ideally, which is negotiable. You don't have to do that. But if you do label it, it's you would take a picture of the toys or find it on Google Images, print it out in color, and put it on the clear bin, so that when your child starts learning how to do cleanup and sorting, they are putting the toys in the right place. So you kind of have to look at the toys and and make them less overwhelming and more organized. So you maybe only want 8 to 10 options of toys that are in bins that with lids that your child can't open, and maybe a few toys that are out that they can play with, but nothing where they can dump things out. So more, solid unit toys. That they can play with that at their will. But then the other toys that you're going to sort of either teach them how to play with well or start introducing to him are all binned up so that they have to make a request in order to use them. And so that is one of those just embedded things that you have to start thinking about. What is my child motivated by, and how can I use that motivation in order to get them interacting with me? And so it can mean changing the way that their room is set up so that toys are in a different place or up high and only a few things are out. It does help them stay organized more when there's less choices. And oftentimes when toys are everywhere, it's very disorganizing for them as well. So the more that you can box things up, and it will start encouraging cleanup in them and more organization in their play. So interest begins activity. We got a little off track, but that's all important information for you. And so with the next one, number 2, the second core element, the child leads and the adult highlights. When you're playing with the toy of interest, let the child initially play with the toy the way that they want to play with it. It'll be interesting to see how they play with it, but you want to kind of see where their mind is at and also what motivates them about the toy, and then you can show them different things. Like you can go, so I'm thinking if it's a ball tower with 4 balls in the top, you give the ball to the child and just watch what they do. And they may just hold the ball. They may put the ball up at the top where the hole is, but they can't push it in. Or maybe they just hit the ball on the side of the ball tower. But then you take a ball and put it in the ball tower really loud. So you want to draw their attention to it because of the sound if they're not paying attention to it for any other reason. So, make it really loud, draw their attention to it and go, whoa, wow, that's cool. The ball went down. And of course, then they're going to try to do it themselves, or they're at least going to be interested in it. And if you do it again, then they're, and again, and wait a little bit and see if they can try to imitate. And if they're having a hard time, then you do hand over hand and show them how to imitate. That's a really motivating toy and something that you can get a lot of skills and imitation from. So thinking about it that way. So let the child figure it out a little bit, then you show them and highlight, how to do things. And you could use your words to highlight it. You could make sound effects, but just highlighting all the different ways you can use a toy or do an activity. Number 3 is ensuring that there's always reciprocal communication happening. So we're always trying to encourage the back and forth because it's the basis of conversation later on. So if it's a toy, we want to teach turn taking with the toy, back and forth. And then if it's words, it's verbalization back and forth. So it's not the adult talking about everything they see and do and say without giving the child space. So you make a comment and you wait for a response, and waiting expectantly, looking at them in the eye. So it's just not passive conversation when you're working on this in the ESDM way. So you're making a comment and you're waiting for them, and you're, looking at them expectantly. And if they don't respond, you respond for them. Oh, yes, you do want to do that. And so you're giving them a voice, but at least gain their eye contact when you're asking them something, like, try to engage them, so that we can build the back and forth before they even become verbal. The fourth core element is creating play together. So instead of just having the one set of ways to do things, you want to try to add from each side of the participants. So your child's going to do one thing with the toy, and then you want to show them another way of doing something with the toy, and then eventually they'll show you a different way. And so you're playing in each other's ways, because that's the way play happens when kids get further along in the developmental chain of play. It's just something where he's got a truck and he's got a shovel and no one's thinking about it, they're just doing it. And that's the goal. So we work a lot on creating play opportunities together by, your child will do one thing and you'll do another, and each of you imitates once in a while, and you reference each other during play. So we work on breaking that down. And then number 5, elaborating the activity is a very important core element, because that's how your child learns new skills. When we're first doing turn taking with the child, we're imitating what they do. And then we try to show them something different, which is elaborating the activity, that is so interesting that they want to imitate what we're doing. And if they want to imitate it, then we try to, help them hand over hand imitate it. And the reason that imitation is so critical is that is the basis for learning. So if a child really, the way that they learn is imitating others, and if they don't have an interest in imitating others because they're not interested in social interaction, they miss out on a ton of learning opportunities. So imitation is one of those things that we work on a ton in the beginning of ESDM. And so that's about elaborating the activity. You're taking what the child's doing and amping it up so that they learn more ways to interact with the toy or the activity itself. And then number 6, my most favorite, is weaving vocabulary. So anytime you can, when you're playing and doing routines with your child, try to plug vocabulary in that is age appropriate for them. So if you're doing, if you're working on making choices, you want to think about, let's say for this child, they're just at single words. So if you're making choices during snack time, you would say, oh, okay, do you want cookies or do you want muffin? And I would have a cookie in one hand and a muffin in the other hand, and bring it up. Look at where their eye is going most, and then I would take that one and I go, oh, you want muffin? And I would hold the muffin up close, and I would try to encourage them to touch the muffin or point to the muffin or say muffin. So anytime you can highlight the names of things or actions with your child, especially if they're just developing language, it's really helpful. Just simplify everything and just think of them as labels. So I want him to know that this is a muffin. So I'm going to say muffin when I show him a muffin. And if and that's how they learn the different vocabulary and the labels. And then after they have labels for things, you want to start introducing actions. So anytime you can, oh, the bird is flying, or he's jumping, or he's riding his bike. So that is the next set of things. And then we go to descriptors, and descriptors are more, it's big, it's small, it's tiny, it's stuck under, and we're talking about prepositions. So anytime you can add those elements into your language and your lessons with your child, please do so. That's number 6. Number 7 is positive affect. And with positive affect, what we want to focus on is when the child looks at your face, they receive some sort of motivator from that. Like, so if you over exaggerate your facial expression so that when they look at you, they get such a positive, feel that they want to do it again. So if you get your child to look at you finally and you're just looking really boring, that it doesn't motivate them to look again. So you kind of have to go over the top with the facial expressions and the sound effects and things like that. So what I mean is, if your child doesn't look at you in the face very much, you get used to the saying his name a million times. So you want to try to get that become a new behavior by associating more positivity to when he does look. So you call your child's name when they're not already distracted and they don't look at you, and so you go up closer to them and you call their name again and they don't look at you, so you at that point go up behind them and touch their arm and then bend your head down so that they do, and you go, Johnny, and then he looks at you because you're right there and you go, hi, and he's either surprised or he thinks that's funny, but then you back off and go about your day, and then a few, probably like 5 to 10 minutes later, you do that again, and maybe another 30 minutes later you do it again. Your child will start paying more attention to you when you say it, but you have to do it in the same way. Johnny, hi, Johnny. So you want to be able to call your child's name and have them turn around and look at you no matter where you are in the room. And the way that you do that is positive affect. So when they do look at you, you're smiling, you're, over the top with the facial expression, you're using your voice. And it sounds silly, but it's almost like you have to make it motivating them for them to look at your face. And so you use that a lot throughout the ESDM program when you're communicating with your child, because you want to have it, you want to be able to use your voice and your facial expressions in order to motivate your child at any time. So whenever you're teaching them something. And some kiddos like just the sound of your voice when it's, when you're using it, wow, great job. And some kiddos need the clapping with the whoa at first. And then some kids don't need as much, but it's always a positive. It's always, oh, good job with that. And giving very specific praise to your child. Like, I like how you sat down in your chair. I like how you looked in my eyes. I like how you gave me a high five, because they need the very specific and concrete when it comes to what they're doing right. And the more you can do that in a specific way, the more those positive behaviors will stay. And some of the behavior management techniques we'll be talking about involve very specifically ignoring negative behavior and praising positive behavior. And you need that affect and that ability to control your own emotions, even if in the face of frustration, in order to make an impact. And number 8 is balanced communication. So going back and forth, making sure that you are not the only one talking in this relationship. And with that, we talked in the earlier core element, but we want to see that the child is able to hold a conversation, turn taking back and forth. And so anytime you can to implement the turn taking in game playing in toys, or just in communication. So pointing out, I like that red bike. do you like the red bike? And so asking questions in the way that makes sense to the child and is easy for them to respond to, so that you can start engaging them in, talking about how they're feeling and their thoughts and bringing them into the world a little bit more.